All right, good morning. I wanted to make a little video explaining all of the things that I learned while making this ramp, things that I would kind of just do different or take better note of next time. So to start, one of the biggest issues I had, and this is probably just me, focusing on the bottom of the ramp, I had issues. So this is the first mini that I built out here. I use pallets. I don't recommend using pallets unless they're all exactly the same height. I had to go through and level each single one, and none of them are on bricks, which is not good. So these are gonna rot a lot quicker than everything else because it's touching the dirt and touches the water when it rains. So this section right here at the bottom, you can see I've got 3 pieces of 2x4, 2x6, and only 2 in the back because I had to tilt it up because this was just going to go into the ground. The way that I cut it basically was not good. The first thing that I learned was the transition. Pay attention to the transition at the bottom. So it would help what I've learned and what I've done with these newer templates. I was a lot more flat starting off with the template before I started going up. For BMX riders, pretty much always use an 8-foot transition, an 8-foot radius. So you can watch tons of videos on how to do that online. I don't think I ever demonstrated it for that because it's all over the internet already. But basically, take an 8-foot long 2x4, put 1 screw at the top. That's going to allow you to pivot it, and you can either drill a hole at the end or just kind of hold a pencil at the end, and you're just going to trace and use the 2x4 turning to make your radius. So 8 feet long is what I would do for BMX. That gives you the best feeling transition. It's going to look really mellow when you make it, and it's going to be worth it. In the end, you're going to be like, I'm glad I made this transition, because that was one of the biggest lessons I learned when I first started making ramps. We would do 7.5, 7.35, and it was always just too quick and too steep. So just stick with an 8-foot radius, even if it doesn't look like it's gonna be good. I know I always wanted it to be steeper when I would look at it. It's like, man, this is gonna be too mellow. And that's another thing too, is you can just go to 5 foot. Like 5 foot's gonna give you that steepness you're probably wanting on a BMX bike. But if you're wanting to learn tricks, like foot jam, like tech tricks, 4 foot is probably the perfect height. And then 5 foot, I think once you go 5 foot and above, everything just starts feeling so much better. So tip 2, stick with 8-foot transition. If you're a skater, you can get away with a tighter transition. I still wouldn't go below 6 feet for the transition for the 2x4 basically. And if you're going to go that tight, it's going to be because you're doing like a 2 or 3 foot. So cut this top off, and you don't want it to be that mellow. You want it to be a little tighter, so you're going to have more pump to get across, and you're going to also probably want a smaller flat bottom. All right, tip number 3. Use wood glue to seal your stuff up. You can also use caulking, and if you go to, I believe it's Skatelight has like a website where they have little tricks and tips and stuff, or I think they have a YouTube channel actually, but they use, I think it's caulking, and they mix it with water, and then they just paint it onto the sides. So that's another thing. Cut your templates and then seal them right away. That way you're not have to deal with anything later on. Like now that I have it all built, I can only seal this outside and hope that not too much water is getting into those center two that I can't really get to now. So that's tip 3. Seal all your stuff up as soon, immediately after you've cut it. If you're going to be building a ghetto as ramp as I did with all scrap wood, I would recommend using 2 layers of OSB and then 1 layer of at least 1132, if not 1/2 inch, especially if you can buy it, and then seal the crap out of it. All kinds of paint. This is deck paint, and once you seal it with this stuff, especially for skaters, you're probably going to want to put that spar urethane on top, because this paint really slows you down. But on a BMX bike, it doesn't really matter to me. It feels kind of good, actually. Next tip, use deck screws. Okay, this is a Walmart, wood screw. This thing is most likely going to break within a year. Once this head pops off, it kind of makes it useless, renders it useless. These deck screws that have the star tip, you can get them at Walmart for super cheap. I would recommend the 3-inch for the studs, and I would recommend using 3 screws per stud, per side. It's worth the deck screws. So the thing about the deck screws is they're way stronger and there's way more torque with that star nut. So when you're trying to pull a board in or push these boards down to suck down, the star nut is really just going to drive into it, and it's just going to really pull down the boards for you. They're not going to break, and they just have way more torque, and they don't strip nearly as easy. So basically, you just always want to be on the lookout for material. I just kind of take mental notes when I drive around, oh, there's a construction site there, or there's a pile of rubbish here, and I'll try to pay attention to if there's anything useful. There's a dump site at the entrance to this little road up here, and there's a couple piles of brick, which is the only reason I started putting everything up on bricks. And it was because I didn't want to have to buy bricks. And now I'm just starting to see them all over town. So I kind of just take these mental notes of, oh, there's a couple little piles of bricks in these specific spots. And if I need to, I can go get them if I run out, over here. If I want certain sizes, whatever, I kind of have a mental note of where to get them. So always be on the lookout. All this plywood that's on this quarter pipe right here was from a big pile of pallets and stuff that were next to the dumpster that they were going to throw away. And there's still 3 or 4 full sheets of plywood over there that I need to snag before they do actually throw them away. So this is, according to Google, this is the exact size pipe you need for coping, or recommended. This is the 2-inch, which it comes out to, I believe, 2 3/8, Cat 2. And then I think this is 6 feet long, and then I got another 2 foot long section, or at least it's at least 2 feet. So we're just gonna weld those two together, and then put them on that 6 foot back there, since that's 8 feet wide, and that will give it a little more pop at the top. It's a huge tip. Always keep an eye out and just always grab stuff. This was brought over here by my friend David. 3 pieces of fencing, and those are pretty big. I was trying to think like what we could use those for, and I was thinking it'd be super useful if we, made this quarter pipe here, and then once we made the flat, actually we can use those for the top for the first layer. Basically put them upside down, screw them down, and then rip off those 2x4s or whatever it is that are holding all the pieces together. And then we can put OSB on top of that, and then the good plywood on top of that, and that will give us 3 layers, and the first layer being like an inch thick. So when you're on the lookout for stuff, instead of just driving around all the time and keeping an eye out while you're driving, I would recommend going on Craigslist, going on Facebook. Craigslist always has like, a free section, and there's always, pallets at least. Beautiful Tucson desert. Scrap metal yards. If you're trying to find coping, it's gonna be expensive. That coping over there that I got for free, I think it's probably $60 for those same pipes now. I don't know if the cost is going down at all, but when I looked it up, and right now it is July 2021, prices of wood are insane. Prices of everything are insane right now. So I don't know if $60 is normal for that. I'm sure it's not. But go to scrap yards or call scrap yards, and they will be a lot cheaper and probably have some cool stuff. And get creative, because you can use metal to make your template. And when you go to the hardware store or like Ace or Lowe's, ask them about wood that's messed up, that's discounted, but you can also ask them about paint that is, miscolored or whatever that people bought and returned, and they'll be like half the price. So don't care so much about the color of the ramp, care more about sealing it. So get good exterior paint, deck paint, if you can, just to make sure that it's going to last long for you, especially if it's an outdoor ramp. And then you can always put the skate light or gator skin or whatever on top, or the spar urethane or skate paint to get the feel that you want. Emphasis on sealing your ramp. I know I wanted to talk a little bit about finding a DIY spot. I think that's probably the hardest thing to do, especially without your stuff getting stolen or messed up, just destroyed, and getting in trouble with the city or whatever. So that's probably the hardest thing to do, is find a good spot, especially like you want it to be close to your house. You can go there as often as you can. I got really fortunate, really lucky to be like, I don't know, half a mile from the spot. There is a lot of traffic out here, a lot of foot traffic. There's a lot of dirt bikers and people that ride gators and stuff through here. This land is all for that. It's for people that hunt and do recreational stuff. You just gotta pay the $15 permit to be out here. in this area of Tucson, it's just terrible for skaters and BMXers, especially BMXers. Oh, and so lastly, the biggest tip, just remembered it, stay consistent. So what I mean by that is there are days I do not want to come out here, but I have to tell myself I only get basically the summertime to come out here early in the morning, because once the wintertime comes around, the sun doesn't come up basically until I have to be at work already. And I don't want to come out here and try to work on this in the dark. So I have to tell myself, you know, I only get these months to work on it. So every single day, every single morning, I got to tell myself it's worth it getting up at 4 in the morning and just putting in 30 minutes to an hour's worth of work. So once, you know, winter hits, the progress is going to slow down so much more. So that's why I'm trying to just get as much done as I can while I can. And I've, you know, just stay consistent. Just put in that 30 minutes or an hour every day, even if it's only 10 minutes. And the whole point of that, of this whole thing, to show people like 30 minutes a day on average is what this is. And like, you know, look what you can do with 30 minutes. This doesn't just apply to building a ramp. That's why my channel is called Maximizing Life. This is just one project I wanted to show the world, you know, what you can do with just 30 minutes of your time, of just being dedicated and being consistent. And I plan on taking this mindset to a bunch of other projects. So I do want to focus on this for the next year to build it even bigger. And I want to focus on my riding a lot more to progress myself mentally and physically. And then, you know, probably going to move hopefully overseas, where I'm definitely not going to do this, you know, in another country. But I'm going to keep that same mindset and apply it to, you know, the next thing, the next project. And I have tons of ideas as far as like inventions and stuff. I love 3D printing. I love engineering type stuff. And so I have ideas for some survival tools. And I'm going to spend, you know, as long as it takes, basically a year, hopefully not that long, working on, you know, what I think is going to be the ultimate survival tool, something that I would want. And then I'm going to try to do everything I can to get it licensed and have some other company sell it for me while I just collect royalties. So that's it. Those are all the tips that I've got. If I come up with anything else, you won't hear about it. All right, I'm out.